Hello and welcome to your weather forecast for June 13th, 2025. We are about to get into a very active pattern as we head right into the middle and closer to the end of the month. And interesting thing today is actually Friday, June 13th, so Friday the 13th. Hope you don't hate that, but it is today. But starting today, we are going to have a threat of some storms over here in the plains. We do have some general thunderstorms over here in the southeast and some general rain further to the north, and lots of cloud cover generally across the east. Now, why this is looking pretty significant is we're actually going to have some pretty significant wind and hail tonight. And this is going to continue in the plains, and later on as we head into the middle of next week, it is going to shift east to the eastern Midwest and Great Lakes region. So let's get right into it, because I think this is the most jam-packed part that I've had in a pretty long time. So let's get right into it. First of all, starting off today, we have a pretty rare enhanced risk over in Montana. It's not uncommon to have a slight risk, but to have a pretty widespread hail risk today is really going to be a big problem, especially over here in central southern areas, the middle of Montana. And that is why we have our enhanced risk over there. Our tornado risk is generally pretty low. We're going to have a small chance over here in Montana stretching down into Colorado and western Nebraska. Our wind risk is going to be generally a 15% risk with a hatched area up here in Montana yet again. Our hail risk is going to be really profound up here, and that is why we do have an enhanced risk. We have a 30% hatched risk for hail over here, and this is going to be a lot different than what we normally see. Not at a weird time of year, but it is pretty pronounced for over in this region. Now, our day 2 outlook for tomorrow, Saturday the 14th, is looking like around the same region, stretching from Nebraska all the way into Montana. So a lot of the same areas are under the gun for maybe a tornado or two, some wind, and again, it is going to be a big hail day, generally in the same area. Now, again, in the same area, we have a day 3 slight risk, which is, again, probably going to be driven by our hail and maybe slightly more by our wind at this point. And this is going to be our last and final day that is going to stick right in here. And after this, it is going to shift to some other areas of the plains. Now, our day 4 is up here in North Dakota and Minnesota. Our day 4 is up here in North Dakota and Minnesota, and slight areas of northern Iowa and Nebraska. So I think this day is going to be mostly a wind threat, if anything, but we are still unsure about that. Our day 5 is down here in Nebraska, and what gets interesting is we have a rare June day 6 outlook over here in Missouri, Illinois, Iowa, and Wisconsin area, and potentially over into Michigan later on. Now, what I think will happen, though, is we're going to have a day 7 later on, and that is going to be positioned probably over in this area in Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio. And I'll tell you why in a little bit. Now, starting off today, we are going to have some supercells over here in the plains, especially up here in Montana. It's not uncommon for you to have storms, but these are just going to be more strong than normal. And we are going to have some potential wind and hail risk over here. This does look more like a wind risk as you go further south, though, as the northern mode is more discreet. And our system over here that has been producing a lot of cloud cover recently is going to continue to produce some general thunderstorms and move slowly further east. Now, as we head into Now, as we head into tomorrow, we're going to continue to have storms in the same area. Now, what I think is interesting on Sunday is we're going to have a potential pattern for storms to kind of like slide down the plains, potentially, and produce more of a wind threat, as the name is saying. Now, here's another model run that I wanted to show for our mesoscale convective potential here. Again, here is those supercells that are going to produce some pretty large hail tonight over in Montana, and then we're going to have this area in Nebraska down into some areas in Texas, probably less significant there. Now, as we head into tomorrow, I don't think it's going to be nearly as pronounced, and we're likely going to start out as hail over here and turn more into a wind threat with whatever happens over here in Nebraska and Kansas. But again, these are super hard to predict. These MCSs or mesoscale convective systems that usually happen at this time of year. So generally, we're watching this area over from Montana, Wyoming, Nebraska, and Kansas, mostly. And generally, further out from that, we do not have the details. Now, what is going to be actually causing this? Now, we actually do have some small disturbances over here in Western Plains that are causing some of this weird stuff, and it is only going to continue. And as we actually head into midweek, we're actually going to start seeing a pretty large disturbance over here in the Midwest and Great Lakes region, and this is going to become even more pronounced as we head into Thursday, which is why I think Thursday is definitely a day to watch. We actually have a pretty big trough for June. We don't usually see patterns like this. And even crazier, we have this great big trough coming into the West Coast here, and that is also potentially going to produce more severe weather. Now, another area to watch is if we do have something to kind of like make a cutoff low along the East Coast, which could produce some storms, or maybe even a potential spin-up tropical system. Again, it is way too far out to tell, but that is just something interesting I did want to mention. Now, it does seem like we are going to get eventually into a ring of fire pattern, potentially, as we head into late June. This is going to be giving us more heat to deal with, and I'll show you that in a little bit as well. But again, with all that heat and this energy that we're going to have from our another trough here, we're going to have a lot of potential severe weather here in the plains. So there's that one for you. Now, looking far out, we are actually going to continue to see our storms. I think in the Monday, we're going to continue to see our sliders down here, and then we're going to shift more over here in the plains, which is why we have our slight risk here. And Tuesday, we are shifted slightly further to the south for more severe weather, and I think this one's going to be, again, mostly hail and wind. Now, what actually happens after this is very interesting, because we have Wednesday, which is why we have it over here in Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Missouri. We have that. But here is what is really interesting, because we actually have a decent low pressure center right here situated over Lake Michigan as we head into early on Thursday. And I think this is going to produce some severe weather, depending on the timing, how severe it could get. Potentially some overnight stuff over here in Indiana and Michigan and Ohio. And I think this has a better chance of producing some tornadoes. Now, after that, we are going to actually be situated in a quiet pattern for a short bit before it does get active across the plains again, having another short bit of some active severe weather. Now, here is our European model, the other model I like to show here. And this model is still showing our cutoff, our low-hanging low pressure here is going to continue to linger. And more severe weather over here in the plains. And this model actually shows a pretty significant day on Tuesday with a potential derecho. Again, this is way too far out, and I would not believe this if I were you. And always look at what whatever the Storm Prediction Center has to say as well. Now, here's why I am highlighting this area. Again, the European model is also showing 2 rounds of storms here, and the second round potentially more significant, maybe with some tornadoes. We're not quite sure. It could be more of a wind-driven threat, but at the moment it looks more like a hail and tornado threat. And again, we are going to have a quieter pattern for a short bit before we again have some stuff over the plains and more big severe weather, some small severe weather to talk about. Now, our temperatures over the next little bit are going to be pretty interesting because we are going to still stay quite above average in the west for a while here. And I think we're going to stay near average to above average over the next little bit over here in the east as this cooler air system is going to move out. I think we're going to have some more heat, not some extreme heat, but maybe at some point we could have some more heat along the east coast. And eventually we're going to have a potential heat wave move into the plains and Midwest. So that is definitely something to watch as a potential ring of fire setup is going to set up here as we head later on into the month. Now, over the next 16 days, which is how far out the GFS goes, we are going to see lots of moisture up here, potentially in the Midwest, and some areas over here. There's not really a specific area to really highlight, and maybe some moisture over here in Texas, but again, it's too far out to know for sure. Now, here are what the temperatures could also look like over the next little bit. Let me show you the 12Z here. That's the one that's complete. And it looks like we're still going to stay kind of in the 70s and 60s over here in the east and the northeast, and some 80s and some 90s. And soon enough, we're going to have some 80s and 90s move into the eastern areas. And here's where I really think we're going to have a potential big heat wave over here in the plains, where we could have multiple days of up to 100 degrees before it finally does get pushed out. You don't look this far out. I don't believe this, but if this were to happen, that would be one of our hottest days of the year. Now, actually, I do want to go over what the Euro does for temperature anomaly too, just to double back up what I say. And again, it is showing a smaller heat wave, still a heat wave though, as we could potentially see a ring of fire setup if the GFS and Euro are correct. And then some cooler air moving into the plains as we head later on, closer to the end of the month. Now, one little checkup on our tropics. We already have our 4th storm in Eastern Pacific. I didn't mention this last time, but it's getting really active over here in the Eastern Pacific. But again, our Atlantic is staying really quiet with no tropical cyclone activity expected in the next 7 days. Now, I do think we do have a slight potential over here in the Bay of Campeche. The GFS is kind of picking it up. We also have our ECAIS model picking up on it. But I think generally this is going to be a low chance of development anywhere from like over here, stretching in this area here. And that, again, is all I have for you today. Thank you so much, and I'll keep you updated on what is going to happen later next week, because that is looking quite interesting.